Commander Jake Martinez sat in his chair on the bridge of Earth's dawn and looked at the stars through the big window. He had been doing patrol runs for 5 years now, and nothing exciting ever happened. The space around Earth was quiet and empty. Most days he just flew around checking for problems and finding nothing. Today felt different, though. His communications officer, Lisa Webb, turned around in her seat and looked worried. She had been listening to strange signals for the past hour. The signals were not like anything they had heard before. They were too organized to be natural, but too strange to be human. "Commander, I think we need to see this," Lisa said while pointing at her screen. The screen showed wave patterns that moved in ways that made no sense. "These signals are coming from outside our solar system, and they are getting stronger." Jake walked over to Lisa's station and looked at the data. He had seen many strange things in space, but this was new. The patterns looked like someone was trying to talk, but using a language that no human had ever heard. The signals were also very powerful, which meant whoever was sending them had better technology than Earth. "How long have these been coming in?" Jake asked while studying the screen more carefully. "About 2 hours now," Lisa replied. "At first I thought it was just cosmic noise, but the patterns are too clear. Someone is definitely trying to communicate with us." Jake felt his heart beat faster. First contact with aliens was something every space officer dreamed about but also feared. Earth had been alone in the universe for so long that many people thought they were the only intelligent life. Now it looked like that might change. On the other side of the galaxy, a very different conversation was happening. Ambassador Zarthak stood in the control room of the massive ship called Eternal Harmony. He was tall and thin with blue skin that seemed to glow in the dim light. His species called themselves the Council, and they had been exploring space for thousands of years. "Another primitive world has been found," reported his assistant while looking at a holographic display. "They have basic spaceflight but nothing more advanced. The usual integration time should be about 18 months. Zarthak nodded slowly. He had done this many times before. When the Council found new intelligent species, they always followed the same process. First, they would study the new species from far away. Then they would make contact and show their superior technology. The primitive species would be amazed and scared. After some time, they would accept that the Council was more advanced and agree to join their galactic civilization. It always worked the same way. The Zephyrians had been scared at first but joined after 2 years. The crystal beings called Vortani had been more curious and only took 6 months. Even the warrior race called Chromath had eventually accepted Council leadership when they saw how powerful the Council's weapons were. "What makes this species special?" Zarthak asked while looking at images of the blue and green planet. "They call themselves humans," his assistant replied. "They live on a world they call Earth. Their technology is very basic, but they have managed to build ships that can travel between planets. What is strange is their brain patterns do not match any known intelligent species." Zarthak looked more closely at the brain scans. Every intelligent species the Council had found showed similar patterns. There were always areas of the brain that were highly developed for specific tasks. The Zephyrians had huge sections devoted to mathematics. The Vortani had special areas for energy manipulation. The Chromath had enhanced regions for tactical thinking. The human brains looked completely different. They seemed average in every area with no special enhancements. It was puzzling because species usually developed enhanced abilities to survive on their homeworlds. These humans appeared to have no special talents at all. "Perhaps they are not as intelligent as we first thought," Zarthak suggested, while studying the data more carefully. "That is what we thought too," his assistant replied. "But they have achieved spaceflight with very primitive technology. They seem to make tools work in ways that should not be possible. Our scientists cannot understand how their ships function properly." This made Zarthak even more curious. In his 300 years of service, he had never encountered a species. That confused Council scientists. Usually, primitive technology was easy to understand because it was so simple compared to Council advancements. Back on Earth's dawn, Jake was preparing his ship for what might be the most important moment in human history. He had sent messages to Earth Command and received orders to attempt peaceful contact. Earth's best scientists and diplomats were on their way. but it would take days for them to arrive. "Commander, we are receiving a new transmission," Lisa announced from her station. "This one is different. It sounds like they are trying to use our language." The voice that came through the speakers was strange and electronic, but the words were clearly English. "Greetings, primitive species. We are representatives of the Galactic Council. We come in peace to welcome you to the greater community of intelligent life. Please prepare to receive our diplomatic vessel." Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. Everyone seemed excited and nervous at the same time. This was really happening. Humans were no longer alone in the universe, but the aliens had called them primitive, which was not exactly flattering. "Send a reply," Jake ordered. "Tell them we welcome peaceful contact and look forward to meeting them." Lisa sent the message and they waited. Within minutes, the response came back. "Your world has been selected for integration into the Galactic Council. This process typically requires 18 months, during which you will learn our ways and accept our guidance. A diplomatic team will arrive at your location in 3 standard time units." The message ended and Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The aliens were not just saying hello. They were talking about integration and guidance as if humans had no choice in the matter. It sounded less like a friendly greeting and more like someone announcing a takeover. "Lisa, get me a direct line to Earth Command immediately," Jake ordered. "And start recording everything. I have a feeling this first contact is not going to go the way anyone expects." As Earth's dawn waited for the alien ship to arrive, Jake could not shake the feeling that humanity was about to face its greatest challenge. The aliens seemed to think humans were just another primitive species to be absorbed into their empire. They had no idea what humans were really capable of when pushed into a corner. The alien ship appeared 3 hours later, and it was unlike anything humans had ever seen. The vessel was enormous and seemed to be made of some kind of living metal that shifted colors in the starlight. It moved without any visible engines and made no sound as it approached Earth's dawn. Captain Paul Rogers had arrived from Earth just in time aboard the diplomatic ship New Frontier. He was a calm man with gray hair who had spent his career dealing with difficult situations. Earth Command had chosen him because he was good at staying cool under pressure and making friends with people who seemed hostile at first. "Open a channel," Paul ordered as the alien ship stopped nearby. The response came immediately, and a tall blue figure appeared on the main screen. The alien looked elegant and proud with large eyes that seemed to judge everything they saw. "I am Ambassador Zarthak of the Galactic Council," the alien said in perfect English. "You may address me as Your Excellence. I am here to begin the integration process for your species." Paul smiled and stepped forward. "Welcome to our solar system, Ambassador. I am Captain Paul Rogers, representing the people of Earth. We are honored to meet you and learn about the galaxy beyond our world." Zarthak blinked his large eyes slowly. In 3,000 years of first contact situations, no primitive species had ever greeted him as an equal. They were usually either terrified by the Council's advanced technology or so amazed that they immediately surrendered their independence. This human was acting like they were meeting an old friend. "You do not seem to understand your situation," Zarthak said with some confusion in his voice. "We represent a civilization that spans thousands of worlds. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. The proper response is to acknowledge our superiority and request guidance." Paul kept smiling and shook his head. "I think there might be some misunderstanding here, Ambassador. We are certainly interested in learning about your civilization and sharing our own culture with you. But we are not looking for new rulers. Earth governs itself, and we intend to keep it that way." Back on the Council ship, Zarthak turned to his science officer, Veltar, who had been monitoring the human ship. Veltar belonged to a species that looked like walking crystals, and was considered one of the best minds in Council space. "What are your readings on these humans?" Zarthak asked quietly, while keeping the communication channel open. "Very strange, sir," Veltar replied while studying multiple displays. "Their stress levels are barely elevated despite meeting an obviously superior alien species. Most primitives would be showing extreme fear or excitement by now. These humans seem genuinely curious rather than intimidated." Zarthak found this deeply disturbing. Fear and awe were natural responses to meeting the Council. Every species they had encountered showed these reactions because they recognized superior technology and power when they saw it. These humans seemed to think they were equals, which was clearly impossible. Perhaps they do not understand our capabilities, Zarthak suggested. Show them a demonstration of our technology. The council ship suddenly blazed with energy displays and projected holographic images of their vast fleet, conquering world after world. The images showed the technological marvels of council civilization, including cities that floated in space, and weapons that could destroy entire planets. Paul watched the display with obvious interest but no fear. When it ended, he nodded appreciatively. Very impressive, Ambassador. Your people have built an amazing civilization. We would love to learn more about your technology and perhaps share some of our own innovations with you. Zarthak felt his confidence shaking. Every other species had immediately surrendered after seeing the display. The humans were acting like they had just watched an interesting documentary rather than a demonstration of overwhelming power. Dr. Amy Foster had arrived with Captain Rogers and was Earth's leading expert on alien psychology. She had been studying the Council's behavior and was starting to understand something important about their expectations. Captain, she whispered to Paul during a break in the conversation, I think these aliens expect us to be afraid and submissive. Every other species they have met must have reacted that way. Our calm response is confusing them. Paul nodded and decided to test her theory. Ambassador, we appreciate you taking the time to visit us. Would you like to come aboard our ship and see some of our technology? It may not be as advanced as yours, but we have developed some interesting solutions to space travel problems. Zarthak was shocked by the invitation. Primitive species never invited council representatives to examine their crude technology. They were usually too embarrassed by how basic their tools were compared to council advancements. You wish us to examine your primitive vessels? Zarthak asked with disbelief. Of course, Paul replied cheerfully. We always enjoy showing visitors what we have accomplished, and we would be honored if you would share some of your knowledge with us as well. Perhaps we can learn from each other. Veltar ran new scans on the human ships while Zarthak tried to process this unexpected turn of events. The reading showed that human technology was indeed primitive by council standards. Their ships used crude fusion engines and basic life support systems. Yet somehow these inferior machines had carried humans to the stars and were functioning perfectly well. Sir, Veltar reported quietly. Their technology makes no sense. The power systems are inefficient and the structural design violates several engineering principles. These ships should not be able to function properly, but our sensors show they are working fine. Zarthak stared at the human ship with growing confusion. In 3,000 years of galactic exploration, the Council had developed precise understanding of how technology progressed. Primitive species always built things in predictable ways that followed universal engineering principles. These humans seemed to have ignored those principles completely, yet somehow made their ships work anyway. Accept their invitation, Zarthak decided. We need to understand how they accomplish the impossible with such crude tools. As the diplomatic teams prepared to meet face-to-face, both sides were discovering that first contact was not going according to anyone's expectations. The Council had never met a species that refused to be intimidated. The humans had never met aliens who expected automatic submission. Neither side realized they were about to challenge everything the galaxy thought it knew about intelligent life. Chief Engineer Roy Baker welcomed the alien visitors aboard the Stellar Phoenix with a big smile and dirty work clothes. He had been fixing a power coupling when the call came that aliens wanted to tour their ship. Roy wiped his hands on a rag and shook hands with each visitor, even though some of them looked very strange. Engineer Tulwar was part of the Council delegation and belonged to a species that had 4 arms and eyes that could see energy patterns. He was considered an expert on primitive technology and had examined hundreds of early spacefaring civilizations. What he saw on the human ship made no sense at all. Your power distribution system is completely wrong, Tulwar announced while looking at the engine room displays. The energy flows violate basic principles of engineering. This ship should have exploded the first time you started the engines. Roy scratched his head and grinned. Yeah, it is kind of a mess down here. We have had to jury-rig a lot of systems to keep her running. She is held together with duct tape and prayers, but she gets us where we need to go." Tulwar asked his translator to repeat the phrase because it made no sense in any council language. When he understood that humans were literally using adhesive, tape and religious hope to maintain their starships, he felt dizzy. No intelligent species should be able to survive in space with such an approach to engineering. Dr. Nancy Price was a human psychologist who had come aboard to study the aliens while they studied human technology. She was fascinated by how the HFY council representatives reacted to everything they saw. They seemed genuinely disturbed by human engineering solutions. "Can you explain how this particular system works?" Tulwar asked while pointing at a control panel that had clearly been rebuilt multiple times with parts from different manufacturers. "Well," Roy began cheerfully, "that panel was not designed for this ship originally. We pulled it out of a cargo hauler that was being scrapped. The connections did not match, so we had to reroute the power through this junction box here. And see these wires, they are actually from a mining drill, but they carry the right voltage, so we made them work." Tulwar stared at the improvised system in horror. Every piece of equipment came from a different source, and none of it was meant to work together. By all engineering principles, the entire system should fail catastrophically within hours. Yet the humans had been using it successfully for months. "This is impossible," Tulwar muttered while running scans with his council instruments. "None of these components are compatible. The harmonics alone should cause resonance failures that would tear the ship apart." "Oh, we had problems with that at first," Roy admitted. "But Lisa in communications figured out that if we run a feedback loop through the nav computer, it cancels out most of the bad vibrations. Took us 3 weeks of trial and error, but we got it working pretty smooth now." Another council engineer, named Velkas, joined the conversation. Her species was known for creating the most advanced manufacturing systems in the galaxy. Everything they built was perfect, down to the molecular level, with no flaws or improvisation allowed. "Where are your manufacturing specifications?" Velkas asked while examining a repair that involved metal plates welded directly onto the hull. "How do you ensure quality control when making modifications like this?" Roy looked confused by the question. "Specifications? We just fix what breaks with whatever we have on hand. Pete in fabrication is really good at eyeballing the right thickness for patches. Been doing it for 15 years and never had one fail yet." Velkas felt her worldview cracking. Council engineering required detailed plans, computer simulations, and extensive testing before any modification could be approved. These humans were making changes to critical systems based on one person's visual estimates and somehow achieving better reliability than council ships. Dr. Nancy Price noticed that the aliens were becoming more agitated as the tour continued. She started asking them questions about their own technology to understand why human methods were so disturbing to them. "How do your people typically solve engineering problems?" Nancy asked Tulwar during a quiet moment. "We analyze the requirements. Precisely then design optimal solutions using established principles," Tulwar replied. "Every component is tested extensively and manufactured to exact specifications. Improvisation introduces variables that cannot be controlled." Nancy nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense for complex systems. But what do you do when something breaks and you do not have the right replacement parts?" "That situation should not occur," Tulwar answered with certainty. "Proper planning prevents such problems. Ships carry sufficient spare parts and maintenance schedules prevent unexpected failures." "But what if something completely unexpected happens?" Nancy pressed. "Like an asteroid strike or equipment failure that was not planned for." Tulwar looked uncomfortable. "Such events would require returning to a properly equipped facility for repairs. Operating with improvised systems would be too dangerous." Nancy began to understand why the aliens were so shocked by human engineering. Their species had developed in stable environments where careful planning could prevent most problems. They had never needed to develop the ability to improvise solutions with whatever materials were available. Humans had evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill them in new and unexpected ways. Survival required the ability to adapt quickly and make broken things work with whatever was at hand. What the aliens saw as reckless improvisation was actually humanity's greatest survival skill. Roy continued the tour by showing off more examples of human creativity. A navigation computer that used parts from 5 different manufacturers. Life support systems that had been rebuilt so many times that no 2 components matched. Emergency repair patches made from kitchen utensils and gym equipment. Each new example made the council engineers more distressed. By their understanding of physics and engineering, the ship should be a floating disaster waiting to happen. Instead, it was operating more reliably than many council vessels that had been built in perfect factories by master craftsmen. How do you maintain safety with such chaotic systems? Velkas finally asked in desperation. Roy thought about it for a moment, then smiled. I guess we just do not worry too much about perfect solutions. As long as it works and keeps us alive, we figure it is good enough. Besides, if something breaks, we will just fix it again with whatever we can find. The simple answer revealed a fundamental difference between human and alien thinking that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of intelligence and survival. The emergency alert reached every ship in council space at the same time. An ancient machine called the Devourer had awakened in the Andorian sector after sleeping for 10 million years. The message was simple and terrifying. The machine was destroying everything in its path and nothing could stop it. Admiral Kate Sullivan received the distress call while conducting training exercises with the human fleet near Jupiter. She was a tough woman with short brown hair who had spent 20 years in Earth's space navy. The message from the council was desperate and unlike anything humans had heard before. Admiral, we are receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic, Council reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Ben Carter. They are requesting immediate assistance from all available ships. Something called the Devourer is attacking their main fleet. Kate studied the tactical data that came with the message. The Devourer was a massive machine intelligence that had consumed 17 civilizations before going dormant, eons ago. It learned from every attack and adapted its defenses accordingly. The Council's most advanced weapons were now useless against it. Set course for the Andorian sector maximum speed, Kate ordered, and send word to Earth Command. Tell them we might be flying into the biggest fight in galactic history. When the human task force arrived at the battle zone, they found chaos. Hundreds of council ships were either destroyed or retreating. The Devourer was a kilometer-long metallic nightmare that seemed to absorb energy attacks and turn them into fuel for its own weapons. It moved through space like a shark hunting helpless fish. Fleet Commander Zolrath was coordinating the council retreat when the human ships appeared. He was a veteran of 1,000 battles but had never faced anything like the Devourer. His massive flagship looked tiny compared to the ancient machine. Human vessels, you must evacuate immediately, Zolrath transmitted to Kate's ship. The Devourer has adapted to all of our weapons. Every attack we make only teaches it new ways to defend itself. It is now immune to every technology in our arsenal. Kate watched the battle displays and saw the problem immediately. The Council was using their most advanced weapons in predictable patterns. Each time they fired, the Devourer analyzed the attack and developed countermeasures. Within minutes, it could neutralize any weapon it had seen before. How long has this thing been learning your tactics? Kate asked Zolrath. 6 hours, came the grim reply. Our greatest scientists estimate it will take only 12 more hours for the Devourer to adapt to every possible weapon configuration we possess. After that, we will be completely defenseless. Kate looked around her bridge at her crew. They were all young officers who had trained for combat against human enemies. None of them had experience fighting ancient machine intelligences. But they also had something the Council lacked, which was the ability to think outside established patterns. Ben, what kind of equipment do we have in the cargo bays? Kate asked her communications officer. The usual stuff, Admiral, Ben replied while checking his inventory lists. Mining equipment, construction tools, some farming gear we were delivering. To the outer colonies, nothing that was designed as a weapon. Perfect, Kate said with a smile that worried her crew. Patch me through to all human ships. I want to talk to every engineer and maintenance worker in the fleet. Within 30 minutes, Kate had assembled the strangest weapons development team in galactic history. Chief Petty Officer Sergeant Nicole White was an expert at moving heavy cargo. Ensign Gary Collins knew everything about cleaning systems and waste management. Lieutenant Sam Hughes worked with food preparation equipment. None of them were weapons specialists. "Here's the situation," Kate explained to her improvised team. "That machine out there learns from every weapon it sees, so we need to hit it with things that have never been weapons before. I want you to turn every piece of equipment on these ships into something that can hurt that monster." The ideas that came from the meeting would have horrified council engineers but made perfect sense to humans who were used to making broken things work. Nicole suggested using cargo bay tractors as kinetic weapons to throw asteroids at high speed. Gary proposed weaponizing the ship's cleaning nanobots to eat through enemy armor. Sam had an idea for turning food replicators into matter disruptors. Within 2 hours, the human fleet had 17 completely original weapons that had never existed before in galactic history. None of them followed established military doctrine. All of them were built from spare parts and civilian equipment using improvised modifications. "Council fleet, this is Admiral Sullivan," Kate announced as her ships moved toward the Devourer. "We are beginning our attack run. You might want to get your science teams ready to record this because it is going to be interesting." The first human attack caught the Devourer completely off guard. Ben Carter fired a mining laser that had been connected to a food replicator, creating a beam that alternated between different energy frequencies faster than the machine could adapt. Nicole launched a cargo container filled with cleaning supplies that turned into an expanding cloud of corrosive nanobots when it hit the target. For the first time in its existence, the Devourer hesitated. Its vast intelligence tried to analyze the attacks but found no patterns to learn from. Each weapon was unique and had been improvised from components that were never meant to work together. The machine that had conquered 17 civilizations encountered something it could not process, which was pure undiluted human creativity. "Impossible," whispered Zolrath as he watched human forces begin to damage the ancient machine. "They are making up new weapons as they fight. How can they be so chaotic yet so effective?" Kate heard the comment and laughed. "Commander, chaos is what we do best. That machine may be smarter than us, but it thinks in straight lines. Humans think in circles, loops, and sometimes we do not think at all. We just act." The battle raged for 6 more hours, but the outcome was never in doubt once the Devourer lost its ability to predict human behavior. Every time it adapted to one improvised weapon, the humans would invent 3 more using completely different principles. The ancient machine that had devoured civilizations was defeated by enemies that refused to follow any rules at all. 3 months after the defeat of the Devourer, the largest assembly in Galactic Council history convened on the ancient world of Prima Centralis. Representatives from over 1,000 species gathered to discuss the implications of what had happened. For the first time in 3 millennia, the Council faced a species they could not understand or categorize. Dr. Peter Lewis sat in the Great Chamber as Earth's representative to the Council. He was a quiet man with gray hair who had spent his life studying human behavior and psychology. The Council had invited him to explain humanity to the galaxy, but he was not sure that was even possible. High Counselor Mordain called the assembly to order with the gravity of someone announcing the end of an age. "We gathered today to address the greatest mystery our civilization has ever encountered. The species called humanity has challenged every assumption we hold about intelligence, technology, and survival." The chamber fell silent as representatives from hundreds of worlds turned their attention to the human delegation. Many had traveled vast distances just to see the species that had accomplished the impossible. Others were there because they feared what humanity might mean for the established galactic order. "Dr. Lewis," Mordain continued, "your species has been called the galaxy's greatest mystery. Council scientists cannot explain how humans achieve superior results with inferior technology. Our military strategists cannot understand how you defeated an enemy that had conquered 17 civilizations. Please help us understand what makes humanity different." Peter stood and looked around the vast chamber filled with beings of every imaginable form. Some looked like humans while others were so alien that they defied description. All of them were staring at him, expecting answers to questions that had puzzled the galaxy for months. "Honored representatives," Peter began in a calm voice, "I think you are making this more complicated than it needs to be. Humans are not mysterious or impossible to understand. We just approach problems differently than you do. Philosopher Nalesh, of the contemplative order, leaned forward in her crystalline seat. Please elaborate, Dr. Lewis. What is this different approach you speak of? Peter thought carefully about how to explain something that seemed obvious to humans, but was apparently revolutionary to the rest of the galaxy. Every species here today evolved to excel at specific tasks. The Zephyrians became incredible mathematicians. The Vortani learned to manipulate energy in ways we can barely understand. The Chromath developed tactical thinking that makes them nearly unbeatable in conventional warfare. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber as representatives recognized the truth of his words. Each species had found their niche and become masters of their particular specialty over millions of years of evolution. Humans never had that luxury, Peter continued. Our world tried to kill us in every possible way throughout our entire evolutionary history. Ice ages that lasted millions of years, volcanic eruptions that changed the climate overnight, asteroid impacts that destroyed most life on the planet, diseases that killed 90% of our population, predators that were faster and stronger than us. Admiral Rachel Brooks, who had arrived with the human delegation, added her own perspective. Dr. Lewis is being polite about it, but the truth is simple. Earth is what you might call a death world. It never gave us time to specialize in anything because the challenges kept changing. We had to learn to adapt to everything, or we would have gone extinct millions of times over. Science Coordinator Veltar spoke up from his position near the front of the chamber. But adaptation has limits. No species can be optimal at every task. Your own data shows that humans score average in every measurement we use to evaluate intelligence. That is exactly the point, Peter replied with a smile. We are not the best at anything specific, but we are good enough at everything. When you have a mathematical problem, you call the Zephyrians. When you need energy manipulation, you ask the Vortani. When humans have any kind of problem, we just figure out a way to solve it ourselves. Fleet Commander Zolrath, who had witnessed the battle against the Devourer, stood to address the assembly. I have seen human tactics in combat, and they are unlike anything in our military databases. They do not follow established doctrine or use proper strategy. Yet they achieved victory where our greatest minds failed. How is this possible? Admiral Rachel Brooks answered with the directness that was becoming recognized as typically human. Commander, your people spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. You developed the best weapons, the most efficient tactics, and the smartest strategies. But you also became predictable. The Devourer could analyze your methods because they followed logical patterns. Humans have never had the luxury of perfecting anything, she continued. We have always had to make do with whatever we could find and adapt to whatever threat we faced. That machine could not predict our behavior, because even we did not know what we were going to do next. We just kept trying new things, until something worked. Behavioral analyst Zendal, who had studied human psychology for months, raised a tentacle to speak. You describe your species as chaotic and unpredictable, yet you have achieved remarkable success. How do you maintain social cohesion without strict behavioral patterns? Dr. Peter Lewis laughed at the question. We argue about everything all the time. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years over every possible disagreement. But when we face a common threat, we somehow manage to work together. I think it is because we all recognize that survival matters more than being right. The revelation that followed reshaped galactic understanding of intelligence and evolution. The Council had spent millennia believing that specialization was the key to advancement. Humans proved that sometimes being a generalist was more valuable than being an expert. High Counselor Mordain spoke for the entire assembly when he made his closing statement. We called humanity our greatest mystery, but perhaps the mystery was our own limited thinking. We assumed that intelligence must follow our patterns, and that technology must develop according to our principles. Humans have shown us that there are other ways to solve problems and other paths to success. Commander Alex Thompson of Earth's Diplomatic Corps made the final observation that would define human-alien relations for generations. You thought we were mysterious because we do not fit your categories. But maybe the galaxy needed someone who thinks outside all the boxes, who sees every problem as a puzzle to solve rather than an obstacle to avoid, and who believes that with enough creativity and determination, anything is possible. The council had found their greatest mystery, and in doing so discovered that the most profound answers sometimes come from those who refuse to accept that anything is impossible. 1 year after the Great Assembly on Prima Centralis, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The human integration protocol was unlike anything in council history. Instead of a primitive species learning from advanced civilizations, it was the advanced civilizations learning from the primitives. Captain Danny Richards stood on the observation deck of the new human ship called Innovation and watched construction robots building the first joint human-alien space station. The robots were working in teams that would have horrified council engineers 6 months ago. Human workers improvised solutions while alien specialists provided technical expertise. The combination was producing results that neither group could achieve alone. "It still looks chaotic to me," commented engineer Tulwar, who had become fascinated by human methods after his first encounter with their technology. "Your people continue to ignore proper procedures and somehow achieve superior results." Danny grinned and pointed at a section where human welders were working alongside Vortani, energy shapers. "See that team over there? The Vortani can manipulate metal at the molecular level, but they work very slowly because they have to be perfect. Our welders are fast, but not very precise. Together they are building joints that are both strong and completed quickly." The concept of cooperative imperfection was spreading throughout council space. Human creativity centers had opened on 17 worlds where alien engineers could learn the art of improvisation. The courses had waiting lists of thousands as species that had specialized for millions of years tried to learn how to be generalists. Dr. Amy Foster was teaching one such class on the crystal world of Vortani Prime. Her students were some of the most advanced energy manipulators in the galaxy, but they struggled with the basic human concept of making something work, even if it was not perfect. "Today we are going to build a simple communication device using only scrap materials," Amy announced to her class of 50 crystalline beings. "The goal is not to create the most efficient design, but to create something that functions using whatever parts you can find." Student Velnash raised a delicate crystal appendage. "Professor Foster, this exercise seems wasteful. Why not design the optimal solution and manufacture it properly?" "Because sometimes you do not have time for optimal solutions," Amy replied. "Sometimes you need something that works right now even if it is not perfect. And sometimes the imperfect solution leads to discoveries that the perfect solution would never reveal." The students began working with materials that included broken computer parts, damaged crystals, and random electronic components. At first, they tried to organize everything perfectly and plan their designs carefully. Amy encouraged them to just start connecting things and see what happened. After 2 hours, student Corvell created a device that should not have worked according to Vortani engineering principles, but somehow transmitted clear signals across the room. "I do not understand how this functions," Corvell admitted while staring at the improvised device. "The energy flows are inefficient and the crystal matrix is impure." "But it works," Amy pointed out. "Sometimes that is more important than understanding why. You can analyze the principles later once you have a functioning solution." Meanwhile, on Earth, Lieutenant Colonel Susan Martinez was working with a joint task force to develop new military strategies. The defeat of the Devourer had convinced the Council that human tactical thinking could complement their own advanced methods. The results were revolutionary. "The key insight," Susan explained to a group of Council military officers, "is that unpredictability can be more valuable than superiority. If your enemy cannot predict your actions, they cannot prepare effective defenses." General Zolrath, who had witnessed human tactics firsthand, nodded in agreement. "Our traditional approach has been to develop overwhelming advantages in specific areas. Humans have shown us that creating uncertainty can neutralize even superior technology." The collaboration had produced the Sullivan Doctrine, which was now standard teaching in military academies across the galaxy. The doctrine emphasized adaptability over optimization and creativity over protocol. It was named after Admiral Kate Sullivan, who had first demonstrated these principles against the Devourer. On the research station orbiting Earth, scientist Dr. Nancy Price was working with xenopsychologist Zendal to study the long-term implications of human-alien cooperation. Their research had revealed something that surprised both species. The data shows that mixed human-alien teams consistently outperform pure alien teams or pure human teams, Nancy reported during their weekly research meeting. The combination of human creativity and alien expertise creates a synergy that neither group can achieve alone. Zendal studied the performance charts with obvious amazement. This contradicts fundamental assumptions about optimal team composition. Council doctrine has always emphasized matching team members with similar skills and thinking patterns. Humans learned a long time ago that diversity makes groups stronger, Nancy replied. When everyone thinks the same way, you get very predictable results. When you mix different approaches, you get solutions that no one expected. The research was leading to the development of integrated crews on ships throughout Council space. Human flexibility was being combined with alien specialization to create capabilities that exceeded anything either group had achieved independently. The results were already showing up in improved exploration missions, better diplomatic outcomes, and more effective responses to emergencies. Commander Jack Thompson sat in his office aboard the diplomatic vessel Harmony and reviewed reports from across the galaxy. As Earth's liaison to the Council, he had watched the transformation of galactic civilization from the inside. The changes were accelerating as more species began adopting human approaches to problem solving. The biggest change is not in technology or tactics, Jack wrote in his weekly report to Earth Command. The biggest change is in thinking. Species that had been locked into specialized roles for millions of years are learning to adapt and improvise. The galaxy is becoming more flexible and more creative. The transformation was not always smooth. Some council members worried that human influence was making their civilization less efficient and more chaotic. Others feared that abandoning proven methods would lead to disasters, but the results spoke for themselves. Joint human-alien projects were succeeding beyond all expectations. As Jack finished his report and looked out at the stars, he realized that humanity had given the galaxy something more valuable than new technology or better weapons. They had given them a new way of thinking about possibility itself. The universe was no longer a place where problems had predetermined solutions, but a place where creativity and determination could overcome any obstacle. The greatest mystery in the galaxy had turned out to be not a species, but an approach to existence that refused to accept limitations as permanent and viewed every challenge as an opportunity to discover something new.